Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope you've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. Today, I'll be discussing the tragic case of Heidi Erickson Firkus. As I researched this case, I found it to be very heartbreaking and very frustrating. Heidi was just living her life, and all of a sudden, it was brutally taken away from her. And it was all really over nothing. I encourage y'all to do your own research with this case and not just look at my video for all of the information. Here we go. Heidi Firkus was born as Heidi Erickson in December 14th of 1984 in Ramsey County, Minnesota, to parents John and Linda Erickson, and she had a brother named Peter. Heidi was known to be genuine. She was known to have loved deeply. She was lovable, loyal, someone who was full of life. Heidi was committed to her faith, and later on in life, she met a man named Nick Firkus at church and married him when she was 20 years old. On April 25th of 2010, Heidi is 25 years old at this point, and she is just faced with the unexpected. That day, she is calling 911, and she is telling the 911 operator how she noticed that someone was trying to break into her home. While she is calling, there is this loud noise which appears, and then suddenly the call ended. After the call ends, her husband Nick calls again, stating that he and Heidi were shot. Help rushed over to the Erickson home, but unfortunately, Heidi was no longer alive. As for Nick, he is still living and he is rushed to the hospital after being shot in the leg. While he is recovering, Nick is able to get out of the hospital and he is in the police station where he's questioned, and he tells the police how, he and Heidi were being evicted from their house and that they had to leave pretty soon. And he explains what happened during the events where Heidi lost her life, how he heard someone trying to break into the house as Heidi and him walked downstairs. But the thing is that Nick tells the police officers how he had Heidi in front of him while they were going downstairs. He explains how he asked his wife Heidi to call 911 as the person was breaking in, and then he explains that once she was on the phone, the person broke into the house. Once the person breaks into the house, Nick claims that he had a shotgun ready, but he fought with the intruder. Then Heidi ended up being shot in her back. And because of the struggle, Nick claimed that he was also shot in the leg. Now, this is a pretty crazy story, but the police hear this as a crazy story. Yet they are just a bit confused by Nick's story. What really threw them off guard was that while Nick was being questioned, he waited at least an hour after being questioned to ask whether his wife Heidi was even still alive. So after speaking with Nick, the police decide, they really have to. They really have to examine the house. They really have to search the house. But they saw that even though Nick said that he and Heidi were ready to leave the house because of the eviction notice, they noticed that nothing was being packed at all. And like Nick claimed, the intruder, he pretty much broke the door down, and then all this chaos ensued. Yet the police noticed that there was no sign of a forced entry. Now, not only were the police feeling like Nick was sketchy, but during Heidi's funeral, people in Nick's life noticed how unemotional he was. Now, I do understand that everybody grieves differently. Like, for me personally, I do not like showing emotion to people in public. I really just show emotion when I am in the privacy of my own home or in the privacy of my own room. But it's one thing to be sad and just not be crying and crumbling. But it's also another thing to not show any emotion at all when your wife brutally lost her life. Since Nick knew that the police were giving him the side eye, Instead of trying to see if he can help the police point them towards the direction of the intruder that he spoke about, he decides to get a lawyer. Nick gets a lawyer, but yet the police are still asking Nick to describe the intruder so that they can really get this sketch image out. The lawyer advised Nick not to do that, then Nick hired his own sketch artist instead. 2 months after Heidi lost her life, Nick befriended a woman named Rachel Sanchez. And of course, there is nothing wrong with making new friends. I'm not saying that at all. There's nothing wrong with making new friends after you lose someone that you are close with. But from what it sounded like, it seemed like it was less than a year since Heidi lost her life, and then he started dating Rachel. Or maybe, yeah, it's like either less than a year or at least a year after Heidi lost her life, he started dating Rachel. Because he would get married a year later after, he starts dating Rachel. And the two had 3 kids together. So, like, from, outside eyes, it seems like Nick moved on pretty quickly. And after he moved on, and went and had all these kids, he rarely ever talked about Heidi. And it's not like Rachel would be jealous of Heidi. Like, Heidi, one, she's no longer living. Two, she lost her life in such a brutal way. So I doubt that Rachel would feel, jealous. He also, he just also rarely never spoke about the case. Like, even though you are married and you have children, you would think that if you loved Heidi as much as, you stated that you did, you would want to go ahead and make sure that your late wife would get justice. And that you will be able to cooperate with the police for as much as, you possibly can. But that's the thing, like, Nick never checked in with the police. Heidi's family checked in with the police extremely often, but Nick never did. Eventually, the police would get a tip on the sketch that Nick had, and even had a name. But the thing is that the name that the police had, this man was in prison when Heidi lost her life, so he clearly didn't do it, unless he has a clone. It was also discovered that Nick was pretty much telling the truth about his financial troubles and that they would most likely lose the house. But the thing is that Heidi never knew about these financial struggles at all. Investigators also discovered that Nick was hiding secrets from his second wife, Rachel, and they ended up divorcing. Like when he was married to Heidi, Nick was also facing these financial struggles and lied to Rachel about them. Rachel found out about these lies and she confronted Nick, asking him about all this, and she would even ask him if he had something to do with Heidi's passing. On top of that, she was recording this conversation. Now, during the recording, Nick didn't confirm that he took Heidi's life, but the investigators did find out about this recording, and they eventually heard it for themselves, so they felt like there was no intruder at all, and that Nick and Heidi were the only people in the house the day that Heidi lost her life. So on May 19th of 2021, Nick Firkus was arrested and charged for taking Heidi's life. Nick is arrested and charged, the case goes to trial, and during the trial, the prosecution's theory was that Nick didn't want people in his life looking at him with shame and felt like taking Heidi's life would keep his loved ones from looking down on him. They go on about how he would shoot Heidi in the back, then shot himself in the leg. A neighbor who was pretty much a witness, he didn't obviously, see everything that happened inside, but he just heard everything that happened outside. A neighbor was brought up to the stand, and he mentioned how he did hear somebody screaming. He mentioned how he did hear Nick screaming. But the thing is that he didn't notice anyone leaving the house. Because it's not like an intruder would just go inside a house and then all of a sudden just disappear. At the end of the trial, Nick was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. If Heidi were alive today, then she would have turned 40 years old this year. She had her whole life ahead of her. Unfortunately, she was robbed of living her life. She was robbed of motherhood, while Nick got to enjoy fatherhood with another woman. All because he couldn't deal with the fact that people would look differently at him over his mistakes. I do pray that Nick would repent of his sins and trust in Jesus Christ alone to save him. That way, he'll stop trying to appeal his sentence and he'll accept what he's done and accept the punishment. Even though Heidi did get justice, I still pray for her loved ones as they mourn her loss, and I pray that God would comfort them. I thank you all for taking the time in your day to watch this video. If you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button. If you have any thoughts on this case at all, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about the next video. If there's a specific true crime case that you'd like me to cover, go ahead and let me know. I will see y'all for next True Crime Tuesdays, and I will talk to y'all later.